food security, housing security, healthcare, education, culture. All of those things have nothing to do with national security based on military might. That is robbing the resources needed for all of those things, especially as we're in this period of polycrisis where we've got the environmental crisis, we've got so many authoritarians, white Christian nationalisms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that what we can do individually is start talking about this. Start talking to people who are friendly. Dare try speaking to people who maybe don't see things this way yet, but it's so logical. And I think more and more people are beginning to understand this. And it's very, very clear in the budget now, in the budgetary priorities.
Aloha, welcome to Cooper Union, what's happening with human rights around our world. And today we're looking at the U.S. Forum of Mayors, local practices to promote world peace. We're joined by Jackie Cabasso, the Executive Director of Western States Legal Foundation and North American Coordinator for Mayors for Peace, and John Burroughs, the Western States Legal Foundation Board Member and Senior Analyst for Lawyers Committee on Nuclear Policy. Two nuclear disarmament activists and experts who have been advocating for the global elimination of nuclear weapons at the local, national, and international level for more than 4 decades. Both the Western States Legal Foundation and the Lawyers Committee on Nuclear Policy are members of the International Association of Lawyers Against Nuclear Arms. Jackie has been with the Mayors for Peace since 2007, and Jackie and John recently returned from the annual meeting of the United States Conference of Mayors in Long Beach, California. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
It's great to have you both because what we've seen in international affairs is the growing role of local leaders having an impact at the global level and assuming a larger responsibility. Can you share with us about the U.S. Conference of Mayors and why it's an important annual session?
Sure. The U.S. Conference of Mayors is the official, nonpartisan national association of mayors of U.S. cities with populations over 30,000. There are about 1,500 member cities, and they do things throughout the year, but at their annual meetings, they adopt resolutions that form their policy for the coming year. This year, they adopted 55 resolutions spanning a whole range of topics of concern to cities, ranging from criminal justice to food and housing to tourism and international affairs. And in the International Affairs Committee, they adopted a bold new resolution submitted by U.S. members of Mayors for Peace, which I'll talk about a little bit later, urging the United States to lead a global effort to halt and reverse the nuclear arms race. And it's kind of remarkable that this is the 21st consecutive year that the U.S. Conference of Mayors has adopted these Mayors for Peace resolutions.
That is significant that over 2 decades now, Mayors for Peace has been able to advocate and impact the agenda. John, can you share with us this about your experience at the U.S. Conference of Mayors and why it's important in your advocacy?
Basically, I go to the meetings as Jackie's partner, but it's also a chance for me to talk with mayors and other people there about the importance of controlling nuclear weapons and eliminating them. And it's also, for me personally, it's sort of a glimpse into a world I wasn't really that familiar with, the world of kind of local governments And it's been a chance to see some cities around the country, Tampa, Long Beach, etc.
I remember meeting you here in Hawaii at the one that was hosted here in Honolulu. And I
Right.
think what's so important is what we can look at is mayors for peace and their ability to bring forth resolutions. I know this year the resolution was, quote, urging the United States to lead a global effort to halt and reverse the nuclear arms race. Jackie, can you share with us a bit about Mayors for Peace and how it operates and how people can get involved to be important in this important initiative?
Sure. Mayors for Peace was actually founded in 1982 during the United Nations Second Special Session on Disarmament. That was a time when some viewers and listeners may recall 1 million people were demonstrating in Central Park in New York City calling for the elimination of nuclear weapons. So a declaration was made by the then mayor of Hiroshima calling for global solidarity among cities to advocate for the elimination of nuclear weapons. That initiative grew into Mayors for Peace, and Mayors for Peace now has over 8,500 members in 166 countries and territories, and that includes 245 U.S. mayors. And Mayors for Peace is trying to achieve 10,000 member cities. So at one level, increasing membership is a goal. And this U.S. Conference of Mayors resolution does call on all the members or it invites all the members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors to join Mayors for Peace and to get active at the local level. So one thing, anybody out there who's hearing this can recruit their mayor if they're not already a member, or they can, if the mayor is a member, they can work with other folks in their communities to work with the mayor to take some kind of action at the local level, such as issuing a proclamation on August 6th and August 9th, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki anniversaries, or on September 26th, the United Nations Day for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. They can get seeds from A-bomb tree survivors from Hiroshima and plant and nurture those saplings and have some kind of ceremony. They can get a poster exhibit from the Hiroshima Secretariat of Mayors for Peace. And they can also participate in the Mayors for Peace annual children's art competition, which is called Peaceful Towns, where mayors put out the word to their local schools, soliciting submissions, artwork from children, and then a winner is chosen, and their artwork is displayed by Mayors for Peace and used in various ways. Now, those are all things that cities can do. So I want to be clear, you need to get to your mayor, and then your mayor has access to all of those resources.
That's a great example, and it is important to look at that. I know here in Hawaii, we're very much, especially city of Honolulu and in Maui, very much involved around Hiroshima, but also Nagasaki as well, and have many events that commemorate and show the cultural links between Hawaii and Japan. Could you maybe give us also, Jackie, before we go to John, some of the exciting examples of which mayors are involved from the U.S. and their contributions?
Well, I'll just give you two recent examples of things. And it's funny because, the United States is so big, and I am the only person who is officially responsible for coordinating in the U.S. that I often don't know. I find out things after the fact. But one of the things that I found was last October, the city of Ypsilanti, Michigan, it adopted a resolution making it city policy for the mayor to be a member of Mayors for Peace, and also opposing a proposed AI data center that is proposed for their location, a partnership between Los Alamos Lab and the University of Michigan. And the issues around the AI data center were, like in many communities, the vast consumption of water necessary, the energy necessary, but also in this case, they're concerned that Los Alamos Lab's involvement would include nuclear use of the AI produced by the AI data center for research and development of nuclear weapons. And then I just found out yesterday that on Tuesday, the mayor of Tacoma, Washington, which is near the Kitsap Bangor naval submarine base, issued a resolution. Tacoma has been a member of Mayors for Peace since 2005, and the new mayor, and members of the city council reaffirmed Tacoma's commitment to advancing peace and called upon national leaders to pursue diplomacy, strengthen arms control agreements, reduce the role of nuclear weapons in national security policy, and move toward a world free of nuclear weapons. So those are just two examples that have recently come to light. And of course, we could talk more about this. More than 80 municipalities have adopted, back from the Brink resolutions, which are explicitly the back from the Brink platform is expressly supported in this new U.S. Conference of Mayors resolution, and reflected in two resolutions that are pending before Congress, which the U.S. Conference of Mayors also has endorsed. And perhaps we can circle back around and talk about those a little bit more.
That'd be great. Moving to you, John, can you share with us a little bit about your perspective on the work of Mayors for Peace and how it fits into some of the larger advocacy that you do as well around nuclear abolition?
Yeah, but let me first just add a little bit on to what Jackie was saying. So, Mayors for Peace, of course, is led by the mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they have a decent staff, especially in Hiroshima, to sort of coordinate and implement Mayors for Peace around the world. We see the mayors and their staff in meetings at the United Nations or the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which takes place at the United Nations. And we were in Japan last August for what was the
80th anniversary.
80th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that's been a really moving and important thing about working with Mayors for Peace, is connecting with the mayors and with the Japanese. And there's a lot of dedication to nuclear disarmament in Japan for obvious reasons. Maybe we're going to talk about the resolution, but just in terms of mayors, here are the mayors who sponsored the resolution. Lacey Beatty of Beaverton, Oregon, Chris Coos of Normal, Illinois, Adina Ishii of Berkeley, California, Elizabeth Couts of Burnsville, Minnesota, Barbara Lee of Oakland, California, and we know Mayor Lee pretty well. Larry, because we're here in the Bay Area, Larry Agron of Irvine, and Martha Guerrero of West Sacramento. For various reasons, we were late in getting the resolution going. Had to be done on a special procedure, but still, Jackie basically managed to get a good number of mayors in the past. What is the total you've ever had? Like 25 or something? Yeah. So that's my comments about the mayors. And some of the mayors are quite passionate about nuclear disarmament. As Mayor Frank County, former Mayor Frank County of Des Moines said, nuclear weapons are a local issue, just as the mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And of course, many mayors are just struck by all the resources that go into maintaining the U.S. nuclear arsenal and all the connected activities. Depending how you count it, it's like 30 billion or like 60 billion a year if you take into account all the associated activities like disposal of the waste. So a lot of mayors are concerned about the diversion of resources that could be going to the American people and to cities. Another really good thing that should already be clear is that it's a way for U.S. mayors to be connected to mayors around the world. And, U.S. mayors and U.S. members of Congress have some tendency not to be that engaged in, various international associations and processes. But with Mayors for Peace, the mayors who get involved, they do have the opportunity to be connected to this international association.
Those are really good examples. And you can also see that Mayor Ishii, of course, of Berkeley, points out it's a nuclear-free zone that stood for a very long time. But both of you are really showing the interconnectedness of all the issues, that we can look at the recent reports as well as the examples of general recommendations coming out of the Human Rights Committee, looking at the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 6 on right to life. And as you brought up, Jackie, earlier, the example of the AI centers, the use of water, you can see then how from the climate crisis to the nuclear crisis, all of these issues are interconnected. And we can see that the mayors are understanding, as you mentioned, John, that links between positive and negative peace, but more important, adopting a historic and a holistic perspective of where we should go forward to guarantee peace for their constituents, that then would send a ripple around the world. Jackie, can you share me a little bit more about crucial roles that cities are playing in this times of peril when we see rise in militarism, authoritarianism?
Yes, and I recently became aware of something called the Pact of Free Cities, which held its sixth summit in Bratislava in mid-May. It's a place for discussion among mayors and representatives of cities from different parts of the world, supporting freedom and democracy and opposing authoritarianism. It was founded by a handful of cities in Eastern Europe, and this year, for the first time, 10 American mayors attended, one of them being Lacey Beatty, the mayor of Beaverton, who became our lead sponsor. And I'm going to just read you a little something here because this is relatively new to me. This year's summit in Bratislava took place in a time of growing domestic decline, increasing political polarization, and pressure on local autonomy in many countries. Under the title Democracy Under Threat, Will Free Cities Remain Safe?, the mayors discussed the role of cities as defenders of democratic values and open societies in an uncertain geopolitical environment. The topics of discussion included defending local democracy, combating authoritarian narratives, protecting vulnerable communities, and strengthening cooperation among cities at a time when democratic values are increasingly questioned in many parts of the world. And specifically, I talked about the United States, and this summit actually nominated the city of Minneapolis and its inhabitants for the Nobel Peace Prize. And because of course, the ICE invasion there and the killing of 2 American citizens and the amazing response of the mayor and the people. And so we put a clause in this U.S. Conference of Mayors resolution from their pact, from the city's summit, which says, quote, cities are not only administrative entities, but democratic communities capable of protecting freedom, solidarity, and the rule of law when these values come under pressure. And the resolution also specifically talks about the violations of international law being engaged in by the United States and the other 4 nuclear armed states parties to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty with respect to their failure to implement their legal obligation to pursue negotiation in good faith on nuclear disarmament and to end the arms race at an early date. And that treaty entered into force in 1970, and that provision is not being implemented. In fact, the opposite is happening. Arms control is gone, and arms racing is revving up, and nuclear disarmament prospects are going into reverse.
Excellent points there. And as you mentioned, I remember in meeting the mayor of Warsaw, who was very much a proponent and a catalyst to create that new freedom movement around cities to challenge the rising authoritarianism. And it's exciting to see what they're doing with freedom cities to point out how, of course, democracy thrives at the local level. And it's really, as we see when our federal bodies are not living up to global international standards, then the local cities are coordinating together. And we can look, of course, and see what has happened in Hungary recently, how they've been able to reverse the tide and then decide and see what's possible as we go forward. And as we look at that resolution that was adopted, it does point out that there's more than 12,000 nuclear weapons. And of course, 85% of those are held by the United States and the Russian Federation. These remain in the global nuclear arsenal and still are a threat, an intolerable risk to humanity. Could you share with us, John, what you think should happen and how we can move forward, looking at the START treaty and other aspects that you see are possible as tools to move from the city level to the national with Congress, but then also to the international United Nations, and see how we can all be a part of these campaigns to move towards a country and a culture of peace?
That's a big question, Joshua, but I'll do what I can. But if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the scene at the U.S. Conference of Mayors when this resolution was being considered in the International Affairs Committee. Jackie and I, we don't know what's going to happen with these resolutions in the committee. There have been years when they barely got through the committee. This year, though, it went pretty smoothly. Lacey Beatty introduced the resolution. She is a lead sponsor, the mayor from Beaverton, and she talked about how she's a combat veteran and war is not the way and resources should be used for better purposes. Then David Holt from Oklahoma City, the president for last year, but still presiding over this conference, spoke up, and he was sort of playing a role in the introduction of this resolution in the committee. And one of the things he said was he recently visited the Ronald Reagan Library, and he was struck by how Reagan was an advocate for the abolition of nuclear weapons. So the resolution got a very good introduction in the committee, and there was no problem with its adoption. No objections were raised. Now the resolution, among other things, first of all, it notes that the Trump administration has proposed for 2027 to raise spending on U.S. nuclear weapons by 12% to maintain and modernize the ballistic submarines, the intercontinental ballistic missiles based in silos, other weapon systems, plus warheads for each delivery system. And right now, the U.S. is trying to recreate a capability for production of the plutonium cores, triggers, or pits for nuclear weapons at Los Alamos and Savannah, Los Alamos Laboratory and the Savannah River site in Georgia. And There's currently an environmental review process for the nationwide plan to accomplish this, the plutonium pit production. And so groups, including ours around the country, have been participating in that environmental review, making comments. So that's what's happening as far as the U.S. government plans on nuclear weapons go. And what the resolution says in contrast is that the administration should implement the disarmament obligation, Article 6 of the NPT, and halt and reverse the new global nuclear arms race. And, engage in good faith negotiations with the other 8 nuclear armed states, especially Russia and China, to halt further buildup and to verifiably reduce and eliminate nuclear arsenals. And other measures are recommended as well. Implement effective checks and balances on the commander-in-chief's sole authority to order the use of nuclear weapons is one of them. And then the resolution says the conference urges Congress to pass House Resolution 317 and Senate Resolution 323, which are back from the Brink resolutions that contains the measures and more that I just referred to. So this resolution is actually a pretty detailed policy document. But, to answer your question as directly as I can, Joshua, the U.S. needs partly just to lead by example, to not engage in modernization, to not spend vast amounts of money, to not highlight and make central the threatened use of nuclear weapons to its foreign policy and its military policy. It's a hard task to coordinate and negotiate with other countries to reduce and eliminate nuclear weapons. Just like, it's a hard job to negotiate the global treaties and implement global treaties on climate and the environment. But it has to be done. And it hasn't been a priority for the U.S. government since the Reagan administration and the administration of the senior Bush. I'm not saying nothing was done, but it hasn't been a pressing priority.
I appreciate those points. And it is true. If you look at what's going on today, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, specifically Article 6, talking about disarmament obligations, that has been enforced since the 70s, but the United States, as you pointed out, definitely not leading by example. Russia, China, France, and the UK are all violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by doing and taking the actions that they have so far. Jackie, coming back to you, and I appreciate the point you raised about Minneapolis, because that was also a point raised. We had a Bringing Human Rights Home conference at University of Pennsylvania, where you did have Chicago, you had Minneapolis, you had Los Angeles, you had New York City. You had these major cities picking up where federal government is leaving the world hanging, but also the citizens of the world desiring a different path forward. And meeting with Minneapolis, you could see how resilient they are coming out of this, coming up with even truth and reconciliation commissions. And it's great to see that at that Freedom Conference, they were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, because they're really moving forward, even coordinating a conference on the decade of people of African descent as well, coming up in August, commemorating around the Durban Conference. Can you share with us a bit then how you're involved and how civil society can build out? Because I know you have amazing work with Abolition 2000 and others, how everyday people can promote and protect rights, but also guarantee and make an impact for peace in the state of the world today.
Well, I'll get to that more directly, but let me come back to this resolution with one more point, because this was an important aspect of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. They are very committed to bipartisanship or nonpartisanship. And Mayor Holt, who John referred to, the mayor of Oklahoma City, is a Republican. Mayor Beatty is a Democrat. And one of the clauses in this resolution says, whereas Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein in their 1955 manifesto notably concluded, remember your humanity and forget the rest. And a similar sentiment was expressed in the September 26, 2025 U.S. Conference of Mayors Oklahoma City Declaration, which was, I believe, written by Mayor Holt, quote, that we are humans first, Americans second, and partisans last. So I think that's a good starting point to answer your question. We are humans first. And I think, and I've said this in other interviews with you and often, but it's what I believe, that we individually have to have a vision of the kind of world we want to see. And we have to articulate how we see that. And we have to come up with a different definition of security. The current definition of national security, which is based on the threat of annihilation at however much that costs, is just not acceptable. It's not sustainable. So we have to come up with another vision. What makes human beings secure? What makes them secure in their individual lives, in their communities, in their environment, food security, housing security, healthcare, education, culture? All of those things have nothing to do with national security based on military might. That is robbing the resources needed for all of those things, especially as we're in this period of polycrisis where we've got the environmental crisis, we've got so many authoritarians, white Christian nationalisms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that what we can do individually is start talking about this, start talking to people who are friendly, dare try speaking to people who maybe don't see things this way yet, but it's so logical. And I think more and more people are beginning to understand this. And it's very, very clear in the budget now, in the budgetary priorities. That's, it's in a way making our job a little bit easier.
I agree. When you look at the current crisis that we're told every 2 days that is almost over, and then 1 month later told really close again, and then more and more bombs and more weapons being dropped on people in Iran. Also, the rising price of what that war is costing, it does provide an opportunity to organize around, to really educate about what war costs. And that you can see by the actions that have been taken, we have not had a better sense of security from many angles, and that it allows us to actually coordinate campaigns around a comprehensive definition of what security means today in the 21st century. And the actions that have been taken by this president have only increased cost, inflation, at the same time racking up huge military spending that could have been spent in other ways, as people are starting to feel a pinch in many aspects of their everyday life, and a more holistic sense of human security and why we're here on this planet, what we can do. John, any closing words?
Right. Well, I just wanted to add on to what Jackie said. It's certainly possible to get involved in control and elimination of nuclear weapons in a number of ways. But one way is to join this growing national organization back from the brink. And then it's possible to work with your neighbors and your friends to persuade your city or your town to adopt a back from the brink resolution. And Back from the Brink includes some of the things I already referred to: negotiation of elimination, ending president's sole authority to use nuclear weapons, and other measures. And if your mayor is not a member of Mayors for Peace, to persuade your mayor to join Mayors for Peace. So there are opportunities for action locally, which then can, build to the national level.
Thank you so much for talking about Back from the Brink. Also, I know Abolition 2000 is a very important entity, Peace Action. These are all ways that people can be involved, but really want to thank you both for being involved with Mayors for Peace. It's a crucial task for a transformative future because it's working for a world without nuclear weapons, but also safe and resilient cities and cultivating a culture of peace among all of humanity, which of course must be a priority for everyone if we are aiming to accomplish world peace. So thank you all for the work that you do, and it's a pleasure to partner with you as we continue in these important efforts at the UN, but also, as you point out, in our own cities and communities. Mahalo.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah, aloha, Joshua, and thanks for having us.